world of so much data, how do we digest information and make it stick? How do we gain wisdom and intelligence and apply it? Great question. That is definitely a challenge in the never-ending infinity data world that we're in. Well, let's go ahead and kick off our wisdom section. This will be our wisdom segment. We're going to actually see if we can gain some wisdom. Of course, Proverbs was, for those that don't know, a catechism. It was intended to be a catechism for young men during the Old Testament period. And of course, the church fathers often recommend the wisdom text and catechism, Proverbs and other deuterocanonical texts for catechesis. So it's pretty much the same for us as well. So let's read one chapter and see if we can gain wisdom. And we'll make this a segment in every one of our streams. Proverbs 11. We're going to skip past the chapters on, I guess I should begin with 10, the wisdom chapters. So we're going to start with 10 because all the way up to 9 are the wisdom texts. R. Rusa, $10, and he's got a Hanukkah candelabra. Are you a Russian spy? Yes, absolutely Russian spy. Never been to Russia. Been invited to Russia, haven't gone. But because I'm an Orthodox Christian, I must be a Russian spy. Yep. And what's funny is that people don't even realize that most of the people that are expatriates who make up ROKOR in Europe and in America were actually fleeing Bolsheviks and the NKVD and were aided by the CIA and British intelligence to come to the West, the White Russians, for example. But today's people are so dumbed down, no nuance, they assume Russian Orthodox churches must be KGB. Even though the KGB persecuted ROKOR and Russian church. This is what people think. A lot of the trad cats think this. It's completely stupid. Proverbs, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a grief to his mother. So honoring our father and mother is very important in Proverbs in the beginning of catechesis here. Now, at the beginning of Proverbs, we learn that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And that's relevant, I think, for the atheists, because all of the atheists' number one flaw isn't really their lack of information or IQ. It's actually a moral problem. That's the problem with atheism. The fool has said in his heart, there's no God in the Psalm. So atheism is actually a moral and spiritual problem that has to do with pride and arrogance, as opposed to a lack of evidence or knowledge. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death. So if we make our focus on just getting paid and stacking cash, our life will be profitless. Our life will be travail. But it's more important to be righteous, to live according to the virtues, according to the Ten Commandments. That's more important than attaining wealth. But of course, most of this world follows the attainment of wealth over any concern for righteousness. The Lord will not allow the righteous soul to famish, but he casts away the desire of the wicked. And remember, in a lot of the Proverbs, we have what are kind of, it's its own unique type of literature, wisdom literature, and they're giving generalities. So we have to understand when we interpret these are not absolute universal claims. Okay, it's not as if no righteous person was ever hungry. But generally speaking, God will provide for his people and not allow them to be destroyed or to go hungry. And that could be interpreted both physically and spiritually as well. And we should always put, of course, the spiritual first over the physical and the temporal. He who is lazy or has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes one rich. Now, notice how many of the Proverbs deal with economics. And we have a lot of people who are super spiritual, and they're too spiritual for money and economics, especially when they're broke young dudes who don't want to think about how to actually make money or be successful. It's much easier to piety signal and talk about how spiritual they are, even though they're not actually monks or monastics, or they haven't taken any vows of poverty. They use that as a way to feel better than other people, when in fact, no, it is still the case that working hard is what will make you successful, both in terms of spiritual things and in terms of earthly things. He who gathers in the summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame. So here we have another one against sloth. So the idea that just laying around and wasting time and not doing anything, not putting the hand to work, or savings. Notice this is also a principle economically of saving money. Now, fiat money, not the wisest thing to save. You might want to have some fiat money saved up for, because it's not always easy to get out of gold or out of Bitcoin per se. But until we get onto a Bitcoin standard, you might want to have some fiat, and certainly gold is better than fiat. But ultimately, I would say, in my view, Bitcoin is the ultimate time-tested. I think we'll see it's time-tested, but compared to gold, it will be the ultimate time-tested money because it's already been way more successful than gold has been if you compare the last 15 years. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Think about the way that the people in the Antifa and the leftist crowd operates, right? Think about revolutionaries. Think about Robespierre or Trotsky or Lenin, and these people are out for blood. The left these days, they want blood, right? Why? Because they're wicked. Because their violence even comes out of their mouth. They can't even talk without expressing a demonic furor to have blood and violence. But those that are righteous, that don't follow that path, we end up blessed. The memory of the righteous is even blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. This is another proverb that backs up the idea of saints and honoring the lives of the saints, honoring the relics and the images of the saints, because their memory is a blessing. It is blessed. But wicked men oftentimes in history go out with a bang and no one remembers them. Their name rots. They get forgotten. Here's a really important one for what we deal with on a daily basis. Now, it definitely applies to today's stream, but it applies to everybody in our lives. A wise man receives instruction, receives commands, receives rebukes, but prattling fools fail and will fall. Think about the debate sphere. How appropriate is this to the debate sphere? How many prattling fools have we heard over the last 5, 7, 10 years of online debate? How many prattling feminists have Andrew and Rachel encountered? How many prattling atheists, prattling feminists like not so erudite that I've encountered and debated? And what happens? They make fools of themselves. Their very words hang themselves within their own 5-minute diarrhea fits. But a person who's wise is willing to receive instruction. He's willing to be corrected, willing to follow the truth no matter what. That's the goal here. The wise man doesn't try to make reality fit what he wants to be the case. He follows the truth and thus is willing to be wrong, willing to be corrected, willing to be instructed. Everybody should be willing to be that way. He who walks with integrity will walk surely, but those that pervert their way will become known. So remember, personal integrity is very important, and your reputation with other people is really important too when it comes to integrity. If you do not have integrity, what ends up happening is eventually you burn the bridges with everybody else, right? Mainly because you don't have integrity. How many people have we seen in the media sphere, in the alt media sphere, the internet sphere, with no integrity, who burn all the bridges, lose all their friends, stab everybody else in the back, and they pervert their way. And ultimately, a lot of times this becomes known. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Again, so the righteous is a well of life. We can think of Jacob's well. We can think of the woman at the well. We can think of Jesus comparing himself to the flowing forth of the waters of life as the ultimate well. Jesus is that well, and his words are life. And so likewise, those of us who talk and explain this to other people, as our catechisms say, those are works of mercy to correct the errant, to rebuke the wicked. In our little catechisms and in our little prayer books, we learn that those are good things to do. And it is actually good to do that. Now, you can have bad motives for doing that, but as long as you're doing it with good motives, those are good things. And thus, the righteous own wellspring out of his own heart, out of his own mouth, becomes a fountain of life. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers sins. Why would you reach out to Fuentes? Why would you try to say that you would like to, see him flourish and do well? Why do you even do that? Why do you reach out to these people? Because hatred stirs up strife. Love and peace try to make amends. Paul says, as much as depends on you, try to be at peace with all men. Now, obviously, there's limitations. I don't reach out, try to be friends with every single wicked person. That's wisdom, knowing when and where to apply it. But if you see people going in directions that you would like to help them not go into, then I think it makes perfect sense. Why would I do debates with Tim Gordon? Do I hate Tim Gordon? Not at all. I love Tim. I like Tim a lot. I consider Tim a bro. His wife, his family, they're amazing people. They're great people. The debates, even if they get heated and intense, from my vantage point, are because I don't want to see him being in a bad situation. When I debated Nick Fuentes, I didn't hate Nick Fuentes. I don't judge him on anything. I would like to see him move in the right direction. And look, it's the same method and approach that you get from me with everybody. When Alex Jones asked me about an Orthodox church, this and that, I say, here's a good Orthodox church in Austin, Texas. Check out Father Moses' church. A lot of people said, well, how come Dyer didn't call out Elijah Schaefer? Well, first of all, I almost never call out people's personal lives over here. I don't do that. It's not a lot of drama streams. I will do a blood sports debate or something like that. It's not a huge deal to me, but we don't usually do a lot of the drama stuff over here, and it doesn't bother me that people do it. That's fine. That's their thing. It's just not what I typically do. Now, Elijah reached out to me after we were on the show a couple times with him. We did an interview, and then I think we did a debate. We had Luigi down there, and then we had the debate with Tim. And Elijah said, hey, I'm interested in Orthodoxy. Could you put me in touch with anybody, a priest or somebody? And he got Father Moses' number, and they had one conversation. So what was it you thought I was supposed to do in this situation? Was I supposed to make exposed streams on Elijah? I don't follow Elijah's personal life. I don't know what he's up to. But in that situation, I did the exact same thing that I've done with every single other person in this sphere. If they ask me questions about Orthodoxy, or if we have that conversation, I point them in that direction. And it was the same thing with Sarah Stock. Now, if those people don't go in that direction, if they choose not to pursue that, can't control that. That's not up to me. People said years ago, why did you go hang out with Wicca Phase? He's a Wiccan. He's not. It's just a name that he chose because he thought it was cool. And when I went and hung out with him, I got him to get an Orthodox study Bible. He said, I want to talk to you about the Bible. Tell me what Bible I should get. Everybody said, oh, you're hanging out with him and doing magic rituals and Satanism. There was none of that. Total, just absolute nonsense. Because we thought of a funny picture next to a casket that was a B-movie set. There was also an airbrushed snake. Yeah, Satanists are really worshiping in an airbrushed snake. Yeah, airbrushed people are doing the work at the satanic temples. Come on, dude. The whole vibe was hanging out and joking around. We did an interview. Why would you talk to Dasha? Because I want Dasha to become Orthodox. I think her husband is. Okay. She moves in the direction of being interested in Eastern Catholicism. Hey, that's a step in our direction. Maybe she'll become Orthodox. So people love to string together these conspiracies. It's like all we do is the same thing with all these people. Why were you on Crowder? You work for Crowder? Andrew helped me get an interview with Gerald, and we talked about all the same stuff we always talk about. Like, what do you expect, man? When I go on the Hodge twins, And the Hodge twins say,
I think Islam based. Islam pretty based, ain't it?
no, Islam is not based.
Islam ain't based? What do you mean? What do you mean Islam ain't based?
We have the same conversation I have anybody else. So, there you go. I don't think it's a good idea to intentionally try to stir up strife without some good reason. You do have to you draw your line in the sand. You have a red line, right? You don't cross that line. Sometimes it is necessary to call people out. But I think that the general attitude is we try to keep the peace. We try to be on good terms with people. And, take in the case of Nick, I've only disagreed with certain takes and positions. That's it. Same approach to Tim Gordon. Disagree with certain takes and positions. And by the way, remember the attitude of Proverbs here. A true friend will tell you if he disagrees and will help you if he thinks you're if you need a course correct. A yes man, a gopher, a toady isn't a true friend. There's another thing too that I think goes on in this sphere, and there's a reason for it. Again, as we've talked about, in the media sphere, a lot of people are, backstabber, narcissistic types of people because it's media. It draws that kind of, people that want attention and all that. So there is the tendency for people in media you have to be on guard because so many people are snakes and they'll burn you and they burn bridges. So it's understandable why people would be so guarded, and that makes perfect sense. I have to be guarded too. There was somebody reaching out to me, let's do this. And I'm like, bro, I don't know you. So let's hold your horses, dog. I don't know you yet. But I think that our goal, not just in media, but whatever your job is, whatever you're doing in life, right? Proverbs is going to be a great instruction manual on how to handle things practically. And I'm just saying from my own experience, over the years, I've been doing Proverbs over and over and over since I was like 19. And that's because it's helped me a lot throughout life. I've always found new insights, new nuggets, new wisdom, and same with the rest of the deuterocanonical text too. But especially young men, I would encourage young men to consistently get in the habit of Proverbs. Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of the fool is near destruction. Well, you got all them books. You read all them books? What did we see Tate say the other day? I don't read books. Books are for dorks. I need to have a fight and I need to fuck. I don't read books. Go Bugatti. Right. Well, Proverbs says otherwise. Proverbs says that a wise man stores up knowledge. Hence why you see 2 different rooms in this house that are all books. And by the way, having a home library was something everybody had 50, 60 years ago. Did you know every home used to have a home library? And now what do men have? Do men have a study? No, they have their man cave, so they have their simulated masculinity of Sports Hole. By the way, shout out to almost 3,000 of y'all. We had over 3,000 earlier. Shout out to all y'all who are not obsessed with Sports Hole. Woo! Props to all of the cool dudes and 9% chicks who are not obsessing over sweaty black men running in circles. Did you see the black dude? He ran in a circle. Oh my gosh, dude. But he did so much running in a circle. And he did it again. It was like, holy crap, dude. And he was freaking sweaty when he did it. So much freaking sweat, dude. The freaking black dudes are running in circles again. Honey, come in here. I'm gonna scream at the screen because the black dudes are running in the circles. Whoa! He did it. I can't believe he did it. He ran in a circle. I grew up with people obsessed with freaking Tennessee football. If you're from Tennessee, man, my blood runs orange. My blood runs orange, boy. Now, we have some fans of sports who always get mad when I do this. I don't care if you like football. I'm just talking about the people that make it their religion, dude. And I grew up with my blood runs orange. Do people in Tennessee get UT orange coffins? They paint their house UT orange. And I'm not kidding. When I worked at the paint store for 10 years, I had memorized the formula of UT orange. So I grew up with uncles and aunts and I was about to say dads, but I only have one dad. Dads. I had my two dads. I grew up with my two dads and they were just screaming at the TV. Tennessee. Anyway. Just kidding. I don't have two dads. What if I did have two dads and my two dads were actually Paul Reiser and that other tall bearded dude? What if Paul Reiser and that bearded dude were my real two dads, but also they were straight? Whoa, dude. Because if you remember, in my two dads, they were straight, right? It wasn't two gay dudes. Rachel, did you want to come up? I saw a minute ago you were thumbing down. Did you want to say something? Feel free to chime in if you would like to. By the way, it's just jokes, you guys. Like, if you want to watch football, I don't really care. I mean, I will watch I like an MMA fight every now and then. Those are fun.
If I thumbed down, I did not mean to.
Oh, it's okay. You could disagree.
And 100% you, because I was backing you up on I have the same Candace tards in my timeline all over the place, telling me you're gonna regret this when it turns out that Candace can prove that she was doing the astral projection with Charlie Kirk. You're gonna feel stupid. And they're like telling me, you're just saying this because you're a Fed shill and you don't know about the CIA and you don't know about, and I'm like, bitch, I've been writing about this shit for years. If you're
yeah, by the way, how would you prove
anything about that?
How would
Substack dummies?
Yeah, how would you prove that Candace can astral project? I'm thinking she would have already got me. You know what I mean? Like, if I woke up with sleep paralysis and I look over and I would see, Sweet Candy's, ethereal body over there ready to pounce, then I would believe it.
I'm just wondering how come she didn't get any vibes about, why didn't she get any premonitions or dreams to warn him not to go that day or to, have more security or something? I guess all of her psychic abilities failed on that day, but it's just they're so terrifyingly wrapped into this. They're so bought in that I have Christians arguing with me that astral projection and stuff it's actually biblically supported. What about Paul when Paul said? And I'm just like, dude, they're so crazy that you really just can't even talk to them. They're way past talking to.
Actually,
so
you know what?
The whole thing of the people coming at me saying I'm a Fed shill who loves the CIA, or I don't know about the CIA, and it's what are you talking about? I have a bestseller which has entire chapters on CIA fuckery. What do you mean What do you mean I don't know about it?
No, absolutely, and I have to give some points though, because that's actually pretty creative eisegesis there. I'll give some points. I wouldn't have even thought about using Paul's, vision of the third heavens. That's actually a pretty creative attempt at proof texting for astral projection. I'll have to give some points for that. That's creative. That's not what the text is about, but they get some points for creative eisegesis. But yes, now I'm all lost in my thought. I was about to go to something. I forgot what it was. All right, let's go back to Proverbs. I've skipped one. So wisdom is found on the lips of those with understanding, but the rod is for the back of those who are devoid of understanding. I would say that if you think about generally in life, people that have understanding, they're usually able to avoid prison and prison beatings. Anyway, wise people store up knowledge. No, we did that one. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, but the destruction of the poor is their poverty. The righteous leads to life. The labor of the righteous leads to life. The wages of the wicked is sin. Paul repeats that, of course, in principle in Galatians, right? He who keeps instruction in the way of life is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. So notice, oftentimes we are our own worst enemies. If we do not receive correction and instruction, we usually end up going astray, and that's because of our own hard-headedness. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. This is an important one to remember because the internet is a rage hate machine. And this week alone, for example, I saw a lot of speculation and people gossiping, and I understand that as commentators, obviously our character to a degree matters, but also remember when we call things out, right, we'll have to give an account as well. So now I'm not saying that makes Sarah Stock an ideal right-wing commentator. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that I'm condoning Elijah or any of that. I'm just saying, like, I've seen sex scandals in media and government, and it never ends. But I don't know what to say about that. I would just simply say that a lot of people capitalize on events when they hate a person. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think as Orthodox, we should not do that. Again, it takes wisdom and it takes propriety to know when to call something out and when to not. And also, as scripture says many times, to overlook a transgression. Now, I'm not saying overlook Sarah Stock or Elijah, being hypocritical. But also I'm saying that let's be measured in the way that we go about these things. Because in the media world, nobody's measured. Everyone just rushes to judgment, rushes to the worst, and they hide their real motivations and wait until something comes out on people that they hate or they want to take them down. And I don't really think that that's the right attitude that we should have. I believe that if people are ill-motivated and ill-willed and they're not sincere, time will eventually make that clear. Time will tell. So you don't have to go on crusades to take people down. A lot of people, for example, have spent years, they try to take Rachel and Andrew down. They've spent years trying to take me down. They want to take them down. They want to expose them. And it's almost always some bunch of nonsense from 10, 15 years ago. Oh, didn't 10 years ago you drunk texted somebody? Yes, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I drunk texted somebody. Yes, big deal. Good job, you got me. So what? I mean, it's just usually nothing burger stuff, right? And also, I would say in the case of Elijah and Sarah, like, yeah, they're probably not morally ready to be leaders in the movement, but I mean, is that the big issue? I mean, the Epstein stuff is the biggest news in the world, right? I mean, that's like exposing the entire architecture of how our world is run by wicked people. I think that's way more important than this kind of stuff. But everybody kind of loves and that's kind of a...
Jay,
yeah, go ahead.
Jay, not to interrupt you, but I think it's pronounced architecture.
Excuse me, but Rachel, that's a little too macabre for my content. I don't go into the macabre stuff, the dark macabre stuff.
That's because you can't
compartmentalize
properly how to pronounce the word.
Okay, well, maybe you'd like to explain the fact how you come from a federal operative background and come from a Green Beret family. Aren't your family all members of the Green Berets?
You got me. I'm exposed.
There we go. See, this is what happens when people see. All along, I was actually a Candace mole to infiltrate Candace haters, and now I have successfully exposed you all. You heard it from Rachel's own mouth. She's from a family of Green Berets. Now, some people say Green Beret. That's actually inappropriate. That's not the proper. Actually, Candace was right all along. Water does freeze at, it melts at, what did she say? 30, 34. I forget what she said. And by the way, I'm astral projecting right now. I'm astral projecting into Candace's.
I think you said water freezes at 0. And so when it's 30 something degrees out, it should just be melting like crazy.
Oh, is that what she thought? She didn't realize it was 32. I didn't really understand what, I knew she was wrong, but I was like, does she not?
And then people were like, she meant Celsius. It's like, sure she did, buddy. Sure. Mm-hmm.
In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So notice a lot of people rush to speak and yap, and a lot of people yap without communicating what they really mean. So don't rush to speak, don't rush to judge, and you don't actually gain anything by massive amounts of yapping. And even Solomon is telling us this in Proverbs. The tongue of the righteous is silver, choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom. Blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow to it. So notice, if God blesses you because you're doing things righteously, your wealth, your wisdom, and that can be physical, actual monetary wealth, or it can be spiritual wealth, intellectual wealth, whatever. Like, it doesn't come with curses and punishments. It's a blessed thing. To do evil is like sport to a fool, but a man of understanding has wisdom. The fear of the wicked will come upon him. The desire of the righteous will be granted. When the whirlwind passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous has an everlasting foundation. I like this too, to think about this in perspective. Like, think about how many, throughout the course of the world, how many wicked people there were. A lot. And think of how many wicked people prospered in their life. Now, fast forward to thousands of years later, who remembers or knows any of those wicked people? Nobody. So what did they really get out of it? A brief bit of pleasure, perhaps, and perhaps a lot of pain as well. So when we put things into perspective, the whirlwind of time comes and the wicked are no more. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy man to those who send him. Again, a lot of rebukes of sloth in the Proverbs. So again, think about how many things deal with work, deal with economics, and deal with your daily interactions and operating from a position of integrity. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. The hope of the righteous will be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction will come upon the workers of iniquity. So just remember, bide your time. If people are bad, they're mistreating you. In the end, in the long run, they will undo themselves ultimately. Don't worry about it, dog. The righteous will never be moved, but the wicked will not inhabit the earth. So this reflects into the Sermon on the Mount, right? The righteous will inhabit the earth, or will inherit the earth. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked is what is perverse. So a lot of focus in this first chapter here, 10, on our words and our economic interactions and our work ethic. So let's take that into account the next time you are tempted to say, it's not my fault that I'm in this situation. Everything sucks and it's everybody else's fault. And no. Yeah, things are bad, but there's always been corrupt people and things have been bad. So that's not an excuse for sloth. And it's not an excuse to try to circumvent righteous ways of operating.